Okay, yes, we are streaming. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Been doing other things, and so I've not been on here. My apologies. My last video, where I talked about the problems we're having reproducing and the projection of no children in the future, did pretty good. If you didn't see that one, you might want to go back and review that video. There's a lot of terrifying things happening and terrifying things coming. One of the things that I've been obsessing about a little bit lately is I don't want to call it climate, because this is the point. It's weather. It's weather, but it's weather as a manifestation of the breakdown of the Earth dynamic system. See, that's what's actually going to happen when the Earth dynamic system starts to fall apart or completely falls apart. It's not a separate thing from the weather. You're not going to see something new show up, and that's going to be, oh, your dynamic system has blown itself to rat shit. How interesting. You're not going to see that. It's going to manifest in the weather. So we have been seeing changes in the weather that are frankly alarming. My only real visibility into that is what's being reported in, of course, my local media, my national media here in the lower 48 United States. And there are actually some pretty good resources. So there is transparency. Those resources don't talk about it the way I do, but that's my job, right? So here I am, talking about what happened to the weather. We're at the end of 2025. Just behind us was the hottest Christmas on record for the United States of America. Some places had just crazy hot Christmas, 70-degree Christmas where it should be 45 or 50. Huge anomalies, 20 degrees, 25, 30 degrees above average for the time of year, and things like that. And by the way, people are beginning to notice that there is something wrong. And it's going to be this big something wrong. The meteorologists are never going to talk about it because they don't really understand it. The climate scientists don't want to talk about it because it's a career-ending move to be an alarmist. What was it? It's the NCAR, National Center for Atmospheric Research, was shut down by the Trump administration for being too alarming. Okay, so that's the chilling effect, right? That's what you're facing now. If you're an alarmist and you're saying things that are embarrassing to the Trump administration, who, of course, every day tells us how much all of this is a hoax, well, then you get shut down. So the scientists aren't going to say anything. The meteorologists aren't going to say anything. Maybe they don't understand, but if they do understand, they know better, right? They know better now. So no one's going to say anything. So here I am. Here I am saying how bad it is. I'm really worried about 2026. So I'm going to make my prediction for 2026. I think 2026 is going to be an absolute shit show. It's going to get hot. It's going to get hot. They're already projecting that we're going to have an El Nino event sometime towards the last half of the year. 2025 will almost certainly be, if not the hottest year on record for this planet. 2025 will certainly be maybe second or third hottest, and that's not a trend that you should take any consolation in. Oh, it's only the second hottest. Oh, it's only the third hottest in the entire instrumental record. That's not good news, people. Okay, that is not good news. We need to stop burning fossil fuels. Straight up, we must stop burning fossil fuels before we can have any conversation about the Earth ever cooling down to what it was before we started doing all this. So that's not happening. Every year we burn more fossil fuels than the year before. Every year is a record, or nearly so. So there you go. That's your future, and that's going to be 2026 as well. So let's look at 2026 and why I'm predicting that it's going to be crazy hot. Hot enough to notice. It's going to be hot enough to notice. People are going to be looking at what's going on with the Earth dynamic system. They won't call it that, but they're going to say something is wrong. And I can show you that. I can show you exactly what's wrong. let's go here. Switch out some screens. Let's go here. That worked. So this is the North Pole. This is a North Pole visible from above. I don't have to mark this, do I? So you can see Greenland. The United States is at the bottom. You can see Mexico at the bottom. This is the polar vortex. The polar vortex, this time of year, in the winter, should have really high-speed winds, and that's what these winds are. The pink, the purple, the red, these are high-speed winds, but they should be located right over the North Pole. They're not. Also, it should be one big cyclone of high-speed winds located right over the North Pole. Clearly it isn't. I see 1, 2, arguably 3, and for the last month I've been seeing this same setup. The polar vortex has been split, and at some point it was even split into 3 parts. This is really bad. I'm going to go over to another screen, go down a little bit further down in the atmosphere. And this is what you get. This is an adequate representation of what the polar vortex is doing. And it's completely off kilter. It's not supposed to look like this. Nothing like this. In the wintertime in the northern hemisphere is when the polar vortex should be most constrained to the north, mostly formed up in a circle, and from there influencing the jet stream. The polar vortex is cold. The polar vortex is where energy goes to die. Heat energy goes to die and exit into space. And right now it's suffering with a thing called sudden stratospheric warming, which is why it's looking like it's looking right now. And if we take a look at the jet stream, this is the resulting jet stream. Folks, this is an absolute disaster. Where to go with this? I can show you a contrast. This is the northern hemisphere looking down, directly down on the North Pole. Let me show you the South Pole, where there's still ice and there's still cold. Okay, here's the South Pole. So this is the jet stream in the south. It rotates the opposite direction because everything in the south is backwards. This is fairly well formed. It's not perfect, by the way. Global heating is probably messing around with the southern polar jet stream as well. We have a lot of heating in the system, folks. It's everywhere. And this is about as well formed of a jet stream as we're probably ever going to see. But once you compare this, which is mostly well formed with a couple of little eddies and cyclones, to what's happening in the north. And this is what's happening in the North Pole. And this is an absolute disaster. This is the jet stream. There's no stream. There's no jet. This is a disaster. This is completely gone. It's just gone. And I did a video a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying I'm really worried. I am genuinely concerned here, folks. If this is what's going on in the dead of winter, I mean, we just passed what is supposed to be the coldest day in winter, the longest night, the shortest day. Okay, and it should be the coldest. We just passed the middle of winter, the winter solstice, and this jet stream should be as well formed as possible. And right now, it's basically completely blown to pieces. The importance of the jet stream in the north is that it acts as a ring fence, and it contains, meaning it blocks. It acts as a fence to constrain the movement of cold air out of the north. The cold air can't get past the jet stream because it's a fence. It's called a ring fence. The high-speed winds of the jet stream block the cold air from coming into lower latitudes like the US, Europe, China, India, right, lower latitudes. Well, when it looks like this, it isn't blocking much of anything. In fact, it's dragging cold air into the south. And the US has had, for about the last 6 weeks, has had a series of notable flip-flops in our weather. And the weather is how all of this is manifest to us, hairless ape descendants. The US 40 gauge, which is the only place I have visibility, so sue me. has had a series of alternating record cold and record hot periods, and about a week apart. It's been completely unhinged. Literally record cold, extending all the way to Florida, and the iguanas falling out of the trees, frozen. And then, 4 or 5 days later, record heat, extending all the way to Canada. And then 4 or 5 days later, record cold, extending all the way to Florida. And this has been going on for 6-8 weeks now. And people, as of today, I checked the comment section on a max velocity video. People are noticing. And for a long time, they didn't. And I was kind of wondering, are people never going to notice? And right now, they're noticing. Okay? I'm not the only one noticing this, people. A lot of people who are actually in climate denial, who think Al Gore is an idiot, all right, and think all the scientists are conspiracists and all climate science is a hoax and Donald Trump is right about everything. Those people are noticing. Because how could you not? How could you not notice? At some point, you're going to notice. Now, that's fine. I should be happy, right? I should be happy. People are finally noticing. The science people will now listen to the science. They'll start to do something to save themselves, right, from global heating. No, they won't. They won't. They just won't do that because they think that the science is a conspiracy and scientists are greedy and fear mongering and making money off of global heating, and that it's all a hoax and Donald Trump is right about everything. So no, they're not going to come around and they're not going to care about this, but it's going to happen anyway. What's the point I keep making in these videos? What's the point I always come down to and always end up saying the same thing? Physics doesn't care. The Earth dynamic system is as dumb as a sack of busted hammers. It has no thoughts. It has no desires, no goals. And it's not listening to you pray to God. It's not listening to you calling it a hoax. It's just going to do its stupid physical thing. It's just going to do what physics has to do. And the sudden stratospheric warming that is happening to the North Polar Vortex has blown the North Polar Vortex to pieces. Do I have to go back and show you the pieces again? Here are the pieces of the North Polar Vortex. This is a disaster. And what does that do? That blows the jet stream to pieces. This is an absolute disaster. This is instrumental data right here. This is fairly current. I don't know, current as of this morning. And this is not going to improve. It's just not. And this would be bad enough. And you would say, okay, well, maybe it'll fix itself, maybe it won't. But I don't really care because whatever. I have reasons to not care. Here's the problem. Here's the actual problem. This, combined with the weather phenomena we have been seeing around my neck of the woods, probably elsewhere in the world, but I don't care. The weather phenomena we've been seeing, plus this picture, paints a picture to someone like me. I'm here to share that picture. And here's what's happening. Big words. I don't know. If I need to explain this in more colloquial terms, fine, I'll do it. But I'm not going to do it right now. As the North Polar Vortex fractures and slows down because of sudden stratospheric warming, the fracturing of the polar vortex is influencing the northern jet stream to also fracture and slow down. As it slows down, maybe I should grab a tool here. I'm going to grab a tool. I'm going to change my color. Should have set this up ahead of time, I guess. My bad. And I'm going to drag this, and I'm going to drag that. I mean, I had all these things set up before. All right, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at this thing. We're looking at this thing. We're looking at this thing here. And we're looking at this thing and this thing. And these are all pockets of cold air. Some of them are over the ocean, but there's there's two focusing on the U.S. right now. And there's one out over the Atlantic, and there's one focusing on Eastern Europe, and there's one in Asia. So these pockets of cold air are being dragged down into the lower latitudes from the cold north. They're being dragged down and broken off, and you end up having cold core cyclones that can travel south, and they act very much like hurricanes, but they're not hurricanes because that's a warm core cyclone that develops over the Caribbean Ocean or the South Atlantic or the South Pacific, tropical, right? Warm core cyclones called hurricanes and typhoons. These are cold core cyclones. We don't have a name for these. They're just atmospheric lows, and we just call them that. But these have hurricane force winds. They are not created over warm water. They are created as they break off from the jet stream. This is now alarming. These cyclones are stealing rotational energy from the jet stream itself. The jet stream itself is now in danger of collapsing completely. It is blowing itself to pieces, and these pieces are called cutoff lows or low pressure troughs or something like that. But what they are is they're cyclones, and they're stealing rotational energy from the rest of the jet stream. And the rest of the jet stream is therefore slowing down. When you steal energy from it, it slows down. And given the situation here in the picture here, what's really happening is the polar jet stream is disintegrating. It's vanishing. The northern polar vortex is also broken down. It is subject to sudden stratospheric warming. It is also in danger of breaking apart. Regardless of which happens first, the northern jet stream is probably on its way out. And the jet stream, and there's another one in the south called the subtropical jet stream. It's weaker, and it's pretty far south, so it doesn't affect like the United States much. That's my only reference point for these videos. But as the northern polar jet stream breaks apart, as it's doing here, that creates an opportunity for hot air masses to extend further north from the equator. This is a control mechanism. The jet stream, the northern polar jet stream, is a control mechanism. And as it disintegrates, hot air can reach the North Pole, it can melt the ice, it can warm the polar vortex, hence sudden stratospheric warming. It can melt the Greenland ice cap and send all that fresh water into the North Atlantic. And it can also, induce, in so doing, shut down the AMOC, the very significant Atlantic current that brings hot water to the western shores of Scandinavian states, the UK, and Europe, providing them with a little bit of heating. And people are worried now that those places are going to freeze if the AMOC shuts down. Well, the AMOC isn't going to shut down for 100 years. I wouldn't be so sure about that, folks. And with the jet stream looking like it is, we can't count on this continuing. This is the dead of winter. The northern jet stream should be as well formed and fast and stable as it's ever going to be any time during the year. In the winter is when that happens. Maybe a little bit into spring, just because of delays. If this is what we're looking at right now, then one prediction is, because of global heating, we go into next year in the summer in the north, and it degrades further. It doesn't improve, it degrades further. We could lose, for all intents and purposes, we could lose the northern jet stream. And I don't know that I have seen anyone discuss that. I think the very idea that we could be in this situation at the end of December looking like this, I think this entire idea was simply unthinkable. I don't believe anybody ever gave any thought that this is where we were going to end up. We've been heading here for a good 15 years, but I don't think anybody thought we would get here. It was just not conceivable. And if people can't conceive of something, then they don't think about it. Then they don't conceive of it. So I'm here today. I'm thinking about this. I'm taking this shit seriously because that's what I do, right? And this, what is this? This is the end of the world. I mean the human world, okay? Not the world, not the rock, All right, the rock is going to be fine. The human world, and in particular, the global industrialized civilization, as expressed by our activity, right? That part of the human world is probably going to be thrown under the bus. This does not look good. This looks apocalyptic to me. And if this continues and gets worse, then I think we're going to have a terrible, terrible hot summer. The Earth dynamic system is on the move. Ultimately, where all of this is headed, just so we understand, where all of this is headed, all this climate change and all this global warming and all this global heating and all the breakdown of the jet stream and all the southern stratospheric warming and all the other things and that and the other thing, where all this is headed is a place that we call hothouse Earth, which harkens back to how the Earth was back in, I don't know, 50 million years ago, sometime after the dinosaurs were driven to extinction by the asteroid strike, the Chicxulub asteroid, meteorite, whatever they're calling it. 50 million years ago is where this planet is headed now. There was a 50 million years ago, everything was, the temperatures from the North Pole through the equator to the South Pole were pretty much the same. There were no ring fences. There were no blocking patterns. Hot air would be generated at the equator due to the sun always shining on the equator from straight above. All that hot air could just circulate wherever it needed to go. And it would go north and it would go south. And there was no barriers to moving hot air into all these places. There was no ice anywhere on the planet to create something like a strong polar vortex. So without a strong polar vortex, you have a weak jet stream. If there's no jet stream to block airflow, then the hot air just makes its way all the way to the North Pole. And Antarctica, which is a continent, had forests and reptiles and things like that, amphibians. Now, it would certainly get dark in their winter in Antarctica, which is our summer here in the north. Their winter, it would get dark because orbital mechanics haven't changed. There would still be no sun. But the warm air is still circulating. So even though you didn't have a lot of sun, and that's a thing, you'd still have warm air. So maybe it would get a little colder because the sun never comes out in their winter. But there still wasn't any ice. There wasn't any ice anywhere on the planet. And Antarctica was not covered in ice. Even in their winter. Even as far south as they are. Even at the South Pole. In their winter, they did not have ice. So that's hothouse Earth. That is hothouse Earth. The Earth has been hot in the past. It hasn't been recently, like for the last 5 million years. We've been in an actual ice age. And a series of glacial events. The glaciers, grow and cover the northern hemisphere, and then they shrink and they go back, and then they grow and they go back. So we've had a series of glacial events, and currently here for the last 20,000 years we've been in an interglacial, so between the glacial events. That's nice. We like that part, right? You like not having glaciers in your backyard and having temperate climates and temperate regions. And
someone's at the entryway doorbell.
Whatever. No, thank you. And that's where we're headed. That's where all of this is headed. We're going back there because we have dug up the carbon resources that were buried by plants. So as the Earth could get cold, and now they're digging them up, and we are reversing that process. And as we reverse that process, we're going back to hothouse Earth. And we are already 1.5 degrees centigrade above a pre-industrial baseline. So we've already warmed that much. They're predicting we'll cross 2 degrees C above baseline in the next few years. I'm thinking possibly this summer. Even if we cross it and go back, still we will cross it, and that'll be a milestone. Period. End of discussion. That just happened, so that's a milestone. And then eventually we cross 2 degrees C and we stay above it. We never go back. Every year is always 2 degrees C above baseline, and then we go to 2.5 and 3. James Hansen, the leading climate scientist, retired now, but still doing amazing work. In fact, he's probably doing better work than when he worked for the U.S. government, because the U.S. government has been in climate denial like forever because of the oil companies influencing policy in the U.S. So when he finally left NASA, he was like, well, now I can do whatever I want to do. So he started working with other scientists who were of the same frame of mind. And he's been doing some really amazing climate work. And one of the things he came up with recently, and he's been kind of building on this idea now with other papers, is that given the current state of the Earth dynamic system, so the level of CO2 in the atmosphere, which is 430 parts per million, up from 250, 430 parts per million, given that, we are probably guaranteed to cross something like 4.8 degrees C above baseline. That's hothouse Earth. That's it. You're done. And there's paleoclimate data that suggests that when you get to 5, that's obviously pretty close, you get another 5 for free, because at that point you melt the methane clathrates. The methane clathrates are methane resources that are deep in the ocean. When the oceans are cold and the oceans are deep, then these hybrid ice crystals made of both water ice and methane ice form. And it's a very specific type of material. It's ice with methane embedded in it, and it's really unstable. And there's a lot of it around the planet. There's a lot of methane clathrates all around the planet. And what we're worried about, of course, is that we're going to get warm enough at some point that these clathrates melt, dissolve, and release the methane, which has been trapped in a like a lattice, like a shell of ice crystals. And when those ice crystals melt, the methane is released. And there's billions of tons of methane gas trapped in these clathrates. And so we learned from paleoclimate data that when the Earth crosses about 5 degrees C above average, whatever the running average is, then you get another 5 degrees above that for free, because you melt the methane's clathrates, and methane is a potent greenhouse gas. So you go from 5, pretty much you just jump to 10. And then you've got geologic time to come back down again. It's a slow process. It can take hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. So once you get to any level of heating in the atmosphere, you're stuck with it. And for human purposes, humans have been around for 300,000 years. Homo sapiens, right? There have been other hominins, Homo neanderthalis, Homo erectus, Homo naledi, all of those. They've been around longer, but they're not Homo sapiens. We are Homo sapiens, and we have been around for 300,000 years. And we've only really been doing a lot of human things for the last 5,000 years, 12,000 years, something like that. We probably didn't even have a lot of abstract representation, meaning art, or even communication, or even verbal communication, right? We probably didn't have a lot of verbal communication and art and things like that until 50,000 years ago. So we've been around 300,000 years, and really most of what you could point to and say, that's human, didn't even exist until 50,000 years ago. So this is a very special period in global history, and we just got rid of it. We ended it. Hothouse Earth. That's where we're headed. It's done. And I think it's done as of 2026. I think that's my prediction for 2026. We go heavy into the early days of hothouse Earth, and it will just get worse. With this kind of thing going on with the jet stream, and why does it keep doing that? Come on back. Be proud. Okay. And this kind of thing going on with the North Polar Vortex, and with these things continuing into summer, well, then we get El Nino. Plus, it's summer, and this kind of thing only continues and gets worse in the summer. So we may exit the summer back into winter, so a little less than a year from now, with even worse conditions than we're seeing right now. We may go into next winter with a massive dumpster fire on our hands in terms of the polar vortex seen here and the jet stream. We may go into winter of next year, 2026, with an absolute disaster. And I think that disaster, at some point in 2026, maybe towards the last half of the year when the El Nino really kicks off, is going to be record heat everywhere. Everywhere in the northern hemisphere. Excuse me. Everywhere in the northern hemisphere, record heat. Everywhere. No exceptions. And they'll say, it's due to El Nino. I'll predict this right now. They'll say, oh, well, that's just due to El Nino. They're not predicting a really strong, record-breaking El Nino. They're just saying, we'll be tending in that direction. And the El Nino, I guess I haven't said what that is. I got to mention that. That's the warm phase of the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, which takes place in the the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. Let me use this app to see if I can bring up the current. Okay, there's oceans. And that's not what I want. I don't want currents. I want sea surface temperatures. Okay, sea surface temperatures, and better still, the anomaly. Okay, so these are departures from normal. These are temperature departures from normal. Anywhere that is dull red to bright yellow to white is above expectation. And any place that is dark or gray is at expectations. And then there's the other side. Anything that is into the dark blue or the purple or the light blue is below expectations. So what you're seeing here in the equatorial Pacific, I'll just draw a line right through here. This is the equatorial Pacific. What you're seeing on the other side of that is anomalously, cool water. That's La Nina. That's La Nina. And what they're saying is that this is going to change. We're going to get an El Nino phase. And what happens is that basically all this purple and blue gets swapped out and turns red, yellow, and white. Anomalously hot. And that's the El Nino phase. This La Nina is said to be fading right now, or soon will be. We'll go through neutral, which is considered neither here nor there. And then we go into El Nino. It's called the Southern Oscillation because it oscillates back and forth between the two extremes. It's about the periodicity varies, but it is periodic. And it's like 7 years, maybe, from peak to peak or trough to trough is about 7 years. So you go from El Nino into La Nina through neutral into El Nino, back through neutral, back to La Nina, and that whole transit takes about 7 years. So this is well understood. We may not even. I think we even know now why it happens. It's complicated. I don't want to get into it. It's not my wheelhouse, but it happens this way. And so they are predicting, because they can, because it is periodic, they are predicting that we'll have a El Nino. We're in a La Nina now. We're going to have an El Nino event, meaning relative heat, at this exact spot in the end of 2026, towards the end, late summer. So that's going to heat the planet, because that's what this does. When you surface a lot of hot water in the South Pacific, because the Pacific Ocean is huge, it's enormous, and when you surface a lot of, I want this to go away. There we go. When you surface a lot of, so here's the Pacific. See, over here on the left it's still warm, but over here on the right, closer to the South America, it's cold. When you surface hot water all across this equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean, that's a lot of hot water, and that heats the planet because it's so huge. The South Atlantic, in comparison, is tiny, and they don't even have this kind of phenomenon going on. They have other things going on, like the AMOC. Trust me. Look at all this crazy stuff going up here, off of the U.S. East Coast and Newfoundland. Look at this. That's the AMOC. Oh, and look at these hot temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. This stuff's crazy. This is hurricane hotbeds down here, and we're going to be seeing a lot of that. But this is the current La Nina. So if we get an El Nino event, in the late summer, plus the destruction of the God, look at all this excess heat in the north. Holy smokes. Oh man. Okay, let's go back to the winds, because that's what the jet stream is. This is low altitude. Let me pick a wind, and I want, what is this? Oh, sorry, air. I want atmosphere, I want wind, and I want, yeah, this is correct now. So this is the correct view. Again, this site is called earth.nullschool. Let me try again. earth.nullschool, L-N-U-L-L, nullschool.net. And you can come in here and you play around with this. This little menu over here is kind of hidden down here in the lower corner, but you can bring this stuff up. So you can do air. I want to see the winds, and I want to go to about the middle of the atmosphere, and that would be where the jet stream is, maybe a little higher if you want to, but the news is not good. Okay, it doesn't matter where you are. The news is not good because this is the news. This is the bad news right here. And it gets even worse a little further down, and then don't be at all surprised when this is what you see. The jet stream. It's cockamamie. It's virtually gone, and I'm worried. My actual concern is that the northern jet stream is going away. Going away. It determines our weather to a large extent by blocking air masses. It determines our weather in these temperate regions, right? So that'd be the lower 48 U.S., the UK, the Europe north of the Mediterranean, China, right? All these mid-latitude areas, their weather is determined by the strength and effectiveness of the northern polar jet stream. Well, this is it. This is what you're getting, folks. This is bullshit. There's no authority here at all. This is okay. Yeah, you're getting weather. You're getting weather, but what you're getting is a collapse of the weather system. Oh, well, that can't be true. Yes, it is. We are seeing a major excursion in the northern hemisphere weather system. It's going bonkers. And I don't even like to call what's happening weather. And it's not climate either, by the way. Your ideas of climate are out the window. This is a collapse of the Earth dynamic system. And where is this going to take us? Wow. Okay. That's important to know, because we're going there. And I think one manifestation of that, we'll see if I'm wrong. It's so chaotic, right? I believe we're going to have some crazy heat towards the end of 2026. Crazy heat. And the heat is coming from the equator. It's not being generated in the north where we live. It's not being generated. It's all coming from the equator. It's the equatorial region right across the middle. It's really hot down there. And what prevents that heat from coming north is the polar jet stream. It has authority, and it sets up blocking currents and steering currents, and it keeps the heat from coming too far north. There's another jet stream called the subtropical jet stream, and man, I don't even see it here. Whatever happened to the subtropical jet stream? Try some different altitudes. That shit is gone, people. The subtropical jet stream is gone. What the heck? There's nothing. There's nothing to control the heat. There's nothing. There's nothing here. Not in the south either. It's gone. Well, maybe I'm not looking at it right, but there's supposed to be a subtropical jet stream to match the northern jet stream, and I am not seeing it, folks. You see something like this once in a while. Okay, here's this, And then up here, there's this other thing, okay? And one of my observations and part of my thinking is that the subtropical jet stream, which is supposed to keep the heat to the south, is actually merging with the northern jet stream, probably because the northern jet stream is actually falling apart. So you may want to think of the subtropical jet stream as replacing it. But again, the direction all of this is headed, the ultimate, I'm going to call it a goal, but the ultimate destination of all this discussion is that we end up with a planet that is the same temperature from the North Pole through the equator to the South Pole. There's just no zones. There's not a temperate zone. There's not an Arctic zone. There's not a equatorial zone. The zones are just gone because the zones were determined by winds and other patterns. And those winds were determined by things like the northern polar vortex and the various jet streams. And the jet streams are falling apart. And the northern polar vortex is essentially disappearing. And so everything you thought you knew about weather, weather is just this weird thing. People don't understand where the weather comes from. The weather is physics, folks. The weather is physics, atmospheric physics. And you have no right anymore, given what we're doing to the Earth dynamic system. You have no right from this point forward to have any expectations regarding your weather. Oh, you'll have weather. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, and I'm not convinced that it's all a hoax and Donald Trump is right. Well, whatever. You're dealing with physics now, folks. Yeah, you're in for it. Whatever we're going to get is what we're going to get. You'll still call it weather, and then it will be killing people. I don't think we're going to get a mass fatality event in 2026. I don't think it's going to get that hot. It's going to get hot. People are going to notice. But they still have electricity. They still have other infrastructure. They can cool themselves. Iran is running out of water. They're going to be up Schitt's Creek come 2026, end of 2026. And Iran probably will just cease to exist. The nation of Iran could cease to exist. Can't rule it out. And they may not be the only one that is just really the only nation that just can't cope. 2026 could push a lot of nations over the edge. It could push a lot of natural phenomena over the edge. The Amazon rainforest could really dry out and actually seriously catch fire. Yeah, it wouldn't be hard to burn half the Amazon rainforest down in 1 year if things were really bad. And same thing in the northern boreal forests, a lot of which right now is in Canada. It's already under threat of fire. It's been drying out. It's being attacked by bark beetles because it's so warm up there. And the northern Canadian boreal forest could just burn, just catch fire. Oh, but that happens every year. Trust me, folks, there is a lot worse coming than what we've seen. Yeah, we've seen some big fire seasons and smoke everywhere. You can't breathe in New York City because of the smoke from the Canadian fires, and all that stuff happens, and all that's true. And that could just become normal. If you're living in New York City, you can't breathe because the Canadian forest is constantly on fire. And it'll be on fire in the summer. It'll be on fire in the winter. And then it'll be on fire in the spring. And it just burns all the time. And you can't breathe the air in New York City. Yes, that could be coming. I'm not predicting that, but it's the kind of thing we're heading into. Hothouse Earth is going to do that. And we are now in the early days, I think, of Hothouse Earth. The system is now changing. The Earth dynamic system is on the move, and it's moving towards where it has to move. And that's Hothouse Earth. And this current collapse of the northern jet stream and the likewise collapse and breaking up of the northern polar vortex, these are symptoms of things to come. And in the summer, whatever this is will be conceivably even worse than this. And at some point, the system can't recover. And that when I say that the Earth system is on an excursion, what I mean is it's going into a new part of phase space. So this is a multidimensional imaginary space. It's not imaginary, it's just mathematical. It's a multidimensional space where the Earth system resides, and it's going into a new dynamic equilibrium in a different part of phase space. That's all a big convoluted, mathematically gobbledygook way of saying it's never going to come back. It can't. It can never come back. Things like this, like the northern jet stream, it'll break up, it'll reform, it'll break up, it'll reform, but it'll be breaking up and going away. And when that happens, well, then the Earth dynamic system has entered a new phase in multidimensional phase space. It will have arrived. And will it stop there? No. It'll keep moving. And I don't think we're. Wow. Where we are now, I don't think we know what comes next. I'm saying 2026 towards the latter half will be noticeably hot, probably crazy hot in a way that people actually start to become frightened, afraid. Okay. But apart from that, what do I really know? What can we say? 2026 could get hot. This was a thumbnail I used for something else. Oh, this was a thumbnail I used when I was talking about the record hot Christmas here in the lower 48 United States. Yeah. Well, guess what? It gets worse, is my thinking. So, I don't know. What are you supposed to do with all this? Well, I think you should start paying attention. Start paying attention. What does that mean? I like to say, my wife likes to say, get to the lifeboats. The Titanic has hit the iceberg. If you think of the Titanic as being like the Earth dynamic system, the Titanic sank. And it's not that it sank and that was terrible. It had to sink. You see, that's the important takeaway from the Titanic. Once it hit the iceberg, once the thing happened, it had to sink. And everybody on board was forced to deal with that. Didn't matter if you have a first class ticket as opposed to someone with a ticket for steerage. Everyone had to deal with that. You're all on as they like to say, you're all on the same boat. We're all living inside the same Earth dynamic system. It's on the move. It's like the Titanic. We're all here. And if it's hit the proverbial lifeboat, what should you do? You should get, if the Earth dynamic system has hit the proverbial iceberg, then you should get to a lifeboat. And what does that look like? Start building communities. Start talking about this. Start preparing for crazy heat, crazy rain, other crazy phenomena. Ask the Jamaicans about Hurricane Melissa, okay? Ask the Filipinos about their 2 back-to-back typhoons, like literally a week apart. Weird phenomena. Shit that you cannot survive unless you really seriously, with thinking, get out of the way of it. That's the level we're all at now. And people didn't get off of the Titanic unless they were deliberately thinking about getting to a lifeboat. That's how you got off the Titanic. You had to change all your thinking. You're not going to New York. Now you're going to the bottom of the Atlantic. Unless, wait, are there lifeboats? And in the context of what is a lifeboat with regards to this story, I call it village life. You're just going to have to circle with your neighbors. You're going to have to support each other as these things get worse and as totalitarian regimes become more unhinged and as Trump and his buddies start to take all the money and take all the things and send all the military into all the disturbed cities and shooting people in the streets. And as all that happens, you're just going to have less support all the time. You're going to have more anxiety, more actual fear, and probably more threat to life. So that sounds like the Titanic sinking to me. And what you're going to have to do what's going to have to be top of mind for you is getting to a lifeboat. And I'm calling that Village Life. Now, I wrote a book, link in the description, called It Was 100 Days. And it's a story about how a group of people, a community, neighbors actually, actual neighbors, start to, I don't care what that was, start to form themselves around the concept of survival as the wheels come off the global industrialized civilization. That's a similar notion as the wheels coming off of the Earth dynamic system. The Earth dynamic system is a natural system, a natural machine, in the same way that the global industrialized civilization is another type of machine. And as the wheels come off of that machine, due to the wheels coming off of the Earth system machine, when that is finally manifest in the global civilization and the wheels come off, then people are going to have to finally act. Because sink or swim, I guess. What are we going to call it? In the metaphors we're using here, you're going to have to go, either you're going to go down with the ship or you're going to not go down with the ship. That's pretty much two choices, and there's really no middle road there. So if you're okay with going down with the ship, or you just don't have any reaction to this, to the collapse of the Earth system and the collapse of global civilization as a result, if you just can't react to that, you can't see it, you're not smart enough, you're a Trumpite, you believe that everything is a hoax, and you think that, you know, the rapture will save you or something like that, and you just can't save yourself, well, then you're going down with the ship. And that's because that's one of the choices, right? That is one of the choices. Oh, in fact, that's the default choice. That's what happened when you don't make a choice. When you don't choose to survive this, then you go down with the ship. There is no accidentally falling into a lifeboat here. There is no accidentally surviving these changes in the Earth dynamic system by falling into a lifeboat, whatever that turns out to be. You're going to have to think about that. Buy my book. It talks about that a lot. And it'll seem like baloney and hippie bullshit or whatever. It's like, read the book. Just do it anyway. Do it anyway, because you'll be happy you did. Because there's only two ways to go. You either do nothing to save yourself, and therefore you're not saved, therefore you perish, or you really go at it with the intent of not dying. You just refuse to die. You just refuse to perish. You're absolutely going to survive this. And that's the equivalent of fighting for a seat on one of the few lifeboats. And if you can't find a lifeboat, can you make one? Can you make the equivalent? Can you just create it? Do you have enough people who can work with you to create a lifeboat? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Most people won't even try. Most people won't even try. Read the book. And I come on here periodically to talk about this stuff. This has been, okay, not that. There we go. This has been on my mind. This has been on my mind, and I don't know what to think. Not pretty. Very alarming. Yeah, that's why I come on here. I see something alarming, I feel like I have to come on here. That's it. That's what I do. That's what I do. I come on here and I try to explain it to people. This is some scary shit, folks. I'm worried. I'm really worried. Yowie. Well, I finished my basement. I'm building the door for the basement. There's some stairs that go down, and then there's no door. So I'm building a door for my basement, and if the temperatures get crazy hot towards the end of 2026 or 2027 or 2028, then I have my nice, cool basement to retreat to during the day. Lifeboat. I got food down there, beans, rice, other things like that I can cook. I have electricity. I have hot and cold water. I'm going to actually install a toilet, a mechanical toilet, so it has a pump in it. You can pump the water back out to the sewer. And if things get rough, then I can hang out in my basement. Maybe during the day, maybe towards the evening, it cools off, or in the morning, it's cool. I can go back to the house and do my laundry, whatever. But when the heat comes, I'm just going to retire to my basement. And I've got a fair amount of off-grid solar, enough to support my property. And if the power fails out here on the streets, my brother tells me, he works for the electric company, he tells me all the horror stories, and I believe him, man. Oh boy, I believe him. And if we have record heat, then all of this is just going to blow itself up. It's going to short out and catch fire and blow itself to pieces. And there won't be any electricity, probably anywhere in the South Bay, which is where I live. Probably maybe nowhere in the Bay Area. All the power could just go out, just completely, regionally, which would take a week to fix. But, I have my basement, and I can hang out my basement and avoid the heat and not worry about it, and have my electricity, my local electric, from my batteries to do my cooking, run my lights, flush my toilet, and kind of be okay-ish. Well, that's a lifeboat. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to build a basement under a house. I don't even recommend it to anybody trying it. You better really have your engineer hat screwed firmly on before you start doing something like that. Well, I did it. It worked. It's great. It's amazing. I have to finish the door so that it can be completely sealed against the outside. The heat is coming. Oh, yeah. It was here on Christmas. The heat was here. Hottest Christmas on record for many parts of the U.S. And hottest Christmas over most of the U.S. Really hot, really warm. We had it right here where I live. Walking around, 70 degrees. December 23rd, 70 degrees outside. Ugly. It only gets worse. It never gets better. It only gets worse every single year. And if this is not the year, then next year might be. And if that's not the year after that could be. It only gets worse. And some years will be a little bit better or not as bad as they could have been. And then the year is going to come. Eventually, this whole thing is going to tip over. Just like leaning back in a chair and eventually getting so far back that you can't right yourself and it just tips over. And this thing is going to tip over. And when it does, people are going to die. By the millions, by the hundreds of millions, possibly by the billions. Hothouse Earth. Just won't survive it. Won't have food, won't have water, won't have air conditioning, won't have electricity. Even if you have air conditioning, you may not have electricity. And then you have nowhere to go. And you try to escape it by going out into the countryside or go and find a river someplace where you can cool off and everything's hot. The water's hot. The asphalt is hot. The car is hot. Then the car runs out of gas and then you're walking. You're walking in the heat and then you die. And you have left the story. And that's where this is headed. Just people being caught off guard, don't have a solution, don't know what to do something that makes sense at the time, jump in the car, try to drive someplace where it's cooler. Car runs out of gas, car breaks down because of the heat. That also happens. And then you're walking in the heat. And you're old, you're on medications, you have small children, they're exposed to the heat, you're exposed to the heat, and the children need to rest in the shade so you can't make any headway, and pretty soon people are dead alongside the road. That's not the answer, folks. Think about the answer. Think about what you're going to have to do, because the heat is coming. The heat is coming. Heat like you cannot comprehend is coming. My advice to you is, don't die.